Welcome back to the Rombough Show. I am joined once again by my dad. Week two, college football. Let's get straight into it. This was a week that many did not think was going to be busy in college football. There wasn't any marquee matchups other than the Michigan-Oklahoma game, but we saw nothing but upsets, nothing but crazy games. Week two, thoughts, Dad? What do you think?
Well, I want to start out with the USF South Florida against Florida up in Gainesville and that, and everybody, of course, was counting on Florida to win, but they just were kicking field goals and that UCF was or USF was hanging with them and everything, and it was so exciting. I'm sure Tampa was just so was on fire all night long because to pull that out was dramatic. They had a big scene there on the YouTube where the USF coaches were going bananas as they were getting out of the into the elevators and stuff. It was so exciting for everybody in Tampa, and they've already penciled USF in for the playoffs as being that at-large team. Of course, I mentioned Navy in the previous, and you thought it'd be Boise State, but now everybody's zeroing in on the men from Tampa, the USF Bulls.
Yeah, last week we saw South Florida upset Boise State, and that was a big shocker. And then they come this week and beat Florida. Florida now looking at the rest of their schedule, it's going to be tough sledding ahead. The rest of their games are extremely tough. Probably the weakest opponent they'll play is Mississippi State team that this week or this past week was able to upset Arizona State. USF is ranked ahead of Alabama probably for the first time in a very, very long time. So that's something to look at in these this week's rankings. Next up on the slate, Arizona State, Mississippi State. We had a feeling that this wasn't really the same Arizona State team. We mentioned in our podcast earlier, Scadaboo was the heart and soul of the team, and they saw it this past weekend with that Mississippi State upset.
Well, one of the things, though, even though Mississippi State was predicted last in the SEC, they're one spot behind Vanderbilt in that, but still, they have a huge offensive and defensive line like all the SEC teams do. So you can't take anybody lightly in that conference. And I knew it was going to be a close game because they're going on the road to Starkville and them. And of course, we had trouble there. We had an overtime when we played them out there 2 years ago when they had that real good team. So I knew ASU would have problems. And it came down to, and I thought ASU had it in the bag. They kicked the field goal, and that was it. But then Mississippi State gets that speedy receiver. He's one of the fastest receivers there is. And ASU had a mix up in the secondary and he went took it to the house and they won it. I was surprised that they were going to do that. I thought ASU was going to win that, but Mississippi State really showed them you can't take anybody lightly. And of course, now there's really concerned there at ASU in that. But still, this Big 12 is tough, and they'll still be a really good team. But Mississippi State, they showed them they can do it.
Yeah, last year Mississippi State definitely a disappointing season, 2-10. The expectations were really low for Jeff Lebby and his staff going into their second year, but this will be a hopefully a stepping stone to maybe a bowl appearance for the Bulldogs. We'll have to see what happens the rest of their schedule. My biggest overreaction I mentioned earlier this past week, UCLA. They had another tough slate. They lost to UNLV in back-to-back weeks. I have them going 3-9. I just think. Um, Nico Iamaleava's kind of he's left for dead there in LA with the Bruins, and I think moving away from Tennessee was a huge mistake on his part. But going back to the ASU Mississippi State game, Mississippi State was up 17 to nothing, and ASU came rolling back, scored 20 in a row, much to the similarity of the Troy and Clemson game. Troy came out to a huge lead, 16 to nothing, I believe it was, and then Clemson came roaring back, scored 27 in a row. Clemson coming off that LSU loss in week one, they had to turn it up there or they were gonna start 0-2. Your thoughts on that game? The
Which
Clemson
game?
Troy game.
Oh yeah. See, Troy's out of the Sun Belt. They beat LSU a few years ago in Baton Rouge, and they do that. They sneak up on these teams. That Sun Belt, you just never know. And they got hot and caught Clemson off guard. And Dabo probably went nuts just to get him going because you cannot take these group of five teams lightly. Ohio. West Virginia went to Ohio in Athens, Ohio, which is rare to go to the G5 program. It only had 26,000 fans, but they played them there and they weren't ready. And Ohio gained him like 426 to 200 and something. So you never underestimate him. And I think Clemson came back and beat Troy, but they had to get motivated because they underestimated him.
Now, you bring up the Big 12, one of the key, most entertaining games, the one that was a lot on the radar for a lot of fans was the Kansas-Missouri game, the border war, which hasn't been played since in over 10 years. That was going to be a very entertaining game. Comes down to the finish. Missouri ends up taking that one. Now, the Big 12 has been a very interesting start for them. Iowa State, obviously, 3-0. They're the leaders of the pack. Arizona 2-0 on the season. ASU with that loss goes to 1-1. You mentioned West Virginia, TCU. These teams, it's not really shaping out the way that it's supposed to be. Oklahoma State's had a really tough loss to Oregon. Your thoughts on the Big 12 and kind of what's unraveled these first couple weeks?
Well, it's kind of an unexpected boon for Arizona because we don't have to play Texas Tech, TCU, or Utah this year. So, and they're the big three. Well, Iowa State's four, and but we play Iowa State in 2 weeks, well, 3 weeks, and then we miss the other three. So we kind of aced out with missing those three, and that so it's going to help us in the standings possibly. But yeah, Oklahoma State, that was rough. That's 69-3 in Eugene and all. And then, of course, West Virginia and that in Ohio. And with K-State having difficulties there with North Dakota, and then they lose to Army. Of course, Army's always pretty tough. Jeff Moken always has good teams there at West Point, and they're so physical, and well disciplined. Those service academies really drain you out because they are so tough and mentally disciplined in that. So it's going to be a tough battle because K-State's a wounded bird now. They're going to really be tough coming into Tucson, and we have got to be ready. I just was watching Brandon's show. He said, you've got to be ready for K-State. They are a really good team. Do not underestimate them. So even though it hasn't turned out the way we planned with some of these big upsets, and like North Dakota shake things up, nearly upset them, still you can't underestimate them, but it's kind of changes who's the bowl positioning and who's going to finish. Like Arizona's got a chance to move up. They didn't think they'd have a chance, but some of the teams they can beat that they probably didn't think they'd beat them earlier this season. So it's unpredictable to see how it's going to finish up, Justin, in the Big 12 standings.
Yeah, I think obviously the SEC and the Big Ten are the top two conferences, but I think the Big 12 definitely has the a case to be that third best conference. The ACC has a lot of great teams too, so definitely the Power Four conferences have really showed out so far in 2 weeks. Now, looking ahead to this upcoming week, obviously Arizona K-State is a huge matchup. Arizona is going to really need that bye week because I think Kansas State is definitely going to test them in Tucson. That line has moved. I think before the season, that would have probably been Kansas State about a touchdown favorite, don't you think?
It was 6.5 because I
Yeah.
pulled it up and it still said 6.5, but I actually had to pull it up on the thing, and it's actually 1.5 favorites. Arizona's actually favored now, so they're getting a little respect now. 1.5 is essentially a toss up, so it's liable to be a real barn burner in Tucson Friday night.
Now, one of the games that me going to school in Iowa was always the game that I always look forward to. The Cyhawk Bowl happened this past weekend. Iowa State. Iowa has struggled offensively the past couple of years, but I think this game it was one of the more entertaining games in the morning. Iowa State able to pull away at the end. Rocco Becht, his third year in the program. Matt Campbell, the winningest coach in Iowa State history. Were your thoughts on that huge rivalry game?
Well, it's the first time Iowa State won at home against Iowa since like 2011. So it's obviously a lot of fun for everybody names there to finally go home winning their home game in that. So a typical grinded out Iowa game, low scoring 16-13. When Kurt Ferenc coaches the games, it's stuff like that all the time. So Iowa State had to hang tough and get some key catches in the last drive to drive them into field goal range and kick the winning field goal. But you knew it was going to be a grinded out game. It wasn't going to be 49-3 or anything. And it's exactly what was happening. Iowa State did come through. That was a big victory for Iowa State. They're one of the leaders along with the other three I mentioned, and that's probably going to be at the power rankings change all the time in the Big 12, but those four are consistently up there. and that. And the others, you never know how they're going to do. Arizona was like 13, moved to 11, and maybe 10 now with this win over Weber State. But in order for Arizona to move higher, they're going to have to beat these big teams to move higher.
Now, mentioning, we might as well get to it. Our favorite team, the University of Arizona,
Mhm.
was able to have a huge win in the first week against Hawaii, 40-6. The offense looked booming on all, like just firing on all cylinders. Fafita in his technically second year, but his third year as a starter, but second full year as a starter. This week, Weber State, I wasn't too worried at the preseason prediction for FCS opponents that could potentially upset a power opponent. Weber State was mentioned as a potential upset for Arizona, but that was
Mhm.
before our Hawaii game. I think we came out of the gates, and I bet now that before last week, a lot of people weren't going to predict that. And Arizona coming into the game, you mentioned it was only a 9.5 spread, but that flipped rather quickly after the Hawaii game to a lot bigger of a spread, and Arizona kind of took care of business. But you went to the game, but some things happened that you weren't able to actually use
Um,
the game.
Yeah, because up here in the Metro Phoenix area and Tucson, 100 miles away, it's different worlds down there because the rains come in the summer, in waking hours, and when they get rains up here, it's at night. But down there, I said they're going to have a big storm, and we could see the storm coming down there. I said it's going to be bad. We get to the game, they said there's a lightning strike within 8 miles, and they put the clock at 45 minutes, and they said we can't start the game until the lightning's away, and it took 2 hours, and then they hit the 45 minutes to get the teams to play, and they didn't start the game till 9:15 Mountain Time. 2 hours, 2.25 hours after it should have started. We ended up leaving. We were so exhausted, but I ended up watching it on the streaming when I got back up here. But still, they look pretty good. They didn't run as much as I'd hoped. They passed the ball a lot, but hopefully the running game picks up maybe with K-State game. But they looked pretty sharp, and the D was solid as ever. And of course, we've been boasting about Danny Gonzalez and that, but they'll be tested on the D this time. But that's helped get us some respect because that's true in those prediction magazines. They did mention Weber State potentially upsetting us, but yes, we did win big. And we popped up on the bowl radar screen with the Sun and the Holiday and the LA Bulls. Most people predicting us to go to one of them. So 2 weeks ago, we were not on any bowl radar screen. So we've got a little attention, but the weather is in Tucson is different than it is in Phoenix. And I knew there'd be a storm, and who knows, there could be one Friday down there for K-State. So they could mess up the TV because we're on national TV down there. And all the teams that they're traveling on Friday night, they could watch our game. So all the teams could watch our game on Friday night. So hopefully the weather can hold and we can have the game at a civilized hour because the game didn't finish till like 1 in the morning, I guess. So, but yeah, Tucson's a different world down there than Phoenix. It gets twice as much rain.
Yeah, I think for Arizona, this game against Kansas State and then that bye week will be really crucial because going Iowa State that next week, we mentioned at the beginning, if they're able to split these two games or even win both, potentially upsetting a ranked Iowa State at their house, I think if we somehow are able to sweep these next two games, we have Oklahoma State after that, BYU, Houston. I think it could be a very clear path if we can get through all these teams to a potential Big 12 championship appearance, which would be unheard of for Arizona. But it's still early, so overreactions are they're. I mean, it's bound to happen. It's that time of year where overreactions are flying. But I think this two game stretch right here is really crucial. We have to split,
Mhm.
and hopefully we can sweep, but we'll have to see what happens.
What's going to happen, Justin? We do win. We're not getting any receiving votes in either poll, the coaches or the riders poll. Zero votes. But if we beat K-State, we'll probably get a few other receiving votes. If we beat Iowa State too, we will be ranked. And then we do not have Tech, TCU, or the other one there, Utah. So we can escape those three. So we could sneak into the playoff if we without them and play one of them for the championship if that does happen, because we potentially could do that. Again, nobody else is probably thinking of that because we're still not quite on the radar screen yet, but it is possible, meaning we do escape the big three. But so that Iowa State game is a benchmark game.
Now, the last game, best for last of the weekend, Michigan, Oklahoma. This was the key marquee matchup. Game day was there. Oklahoma, they came out firing on all cylinders. Their defense seemed to be in lock. Their offense was firing on all cylinders. They were up 14 to nothing at halftime, and they kind of carried the momentum into the second half. Michigan was able to get 13 points in the third quarter, but that's all it was for that game. John Mateer, the transfer from Washington State for Oklahoma, had a relatively good performance, two touchdowns on the rushing touchdowns and one in the air. Did have one interception though, but I think that was a huge step up for him. I think that could easily get him in the Heisman conversation, at least for the week two Heisman watch. Michigan, we saw it in week one, a freshman quarterback on the road. It's very, very hard to win as a freshman quarterback in general, but it's very hard for a freshman quarterback to win on the road. Bryce Underwood, he played okay. I think getting the running game was definitely a priority for Michigan when they won the title in 2023. Running the ball, having that great offensive lineman up front was kind of their MO. Sharon Moore's kind of stuck to his guns that way. Justice Haynes had that huge 75-yard touchdown to start the second half. That was kind of one of the highlights of that game. What were your thoughts on this Michigan Oklahoma marquee matchup?
Well, it's extremely difficult to win there in Norman, and I knew it would be tough for Michigan in that. And this is a big, big victory for Venables there because he's been under a lot of heat. He's got like a losing record there, and OU's normally used to rolling along pretty good. So this was a huge victory for him because he would have been under heat, and that's a big one for them, and it will help them. But the rugged SEC they're going to have to deal with the rest of the year, pretty much. So, but it was a big victory for Oklahoma.
For Oklahoma, as you mentioned, Illinois State they beat in week one. They had to get that one. This game against Michigan was pretty huge because next week they have Temple, which they should be 3-0. Then it goes Auburn, Cupcake, Kent State, Texas Red River rivalry, South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri, LSU. Those last LSU, Missouri, Oklahoma, Tennessee, or no, Alabama, Missouri, LSU, Tennessee, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Texas are all ranked. So their last seven games are potentially against ranked opponents. So that Oklahoma schedule is among the toughest in the league. So they will be lucky to get a bowl game. But Brent Venables, if he can keep getting these wins under his belt, will really save his job because he was definitely in the hot seat coming into this season.
Yeah, I think, Justin, that 11 SEC teams are ranked, if I'm not mistaken. It's incredible. That's almost half of them. So it's so tough. And you're right. It's like the baton death march for Oklahoma trying to play all those teams, some of them on the road and that. So it's going to be brutal. So to get a winning season, normally in Oklahoma, you just steamrolled at like 10-2 all the time. But now in the SEC, they're going to be lucky just to get a bowl.
Yeah, of those 11 teams, the highest ranked is LSU at number three. Then you have Georgia at six, Texas at seven. So three teams in the top 10. And then kind of sprinkled out on throughout South Carolina, you got Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas A&M. They're all pretty much gonna 11 can't make the playoff. That's not gonna happen. So it's gonna be October is the month that a lot of those matchups are gonna happen. That'll be very interesting. This upcoming weekend we have Georgia at Tennessee. That'll be a huge matchup for the SEC. That's kind of the marquee matchup this weekend. Any closing thoughts in terms of this past college football weekend?
Well, one of the things is they're going to beat each other out, cannibalization, and some will fall out of the rankings. So there won't be 11 SEC teams at the end of the season because they're just going to beat each other up. But again, they'll still get four in the playoffs, but they're just going to knock each other out because they're just so tough that you can't win them all in that. But as far as the we've talked about most of the games like Ohio. We talked about that a little bit, beating West Virginia at Athens there, and the Baylor game and that. So we've talked about in the K-State and Army. We talked about Kansas, Missouri. I can't think. There's plenty of games, but those were some of the key ones. And you never know. I always say there's three shocking upsets a week, so it's pretty much par for the course. We had probably three this week and probably three next week. We got a lot of big games like Georgia and Tennessee, and Wisconsin's going down to Tuscaloosa and playing Alabama, heavy underdogs. You
And
got Texas
Notre
A&M and
Dame.
M and Notre Dame, Florida LSU, and USF. They got to go to Miami down there in South Beach. So it doesn't let up when they have to play two Florida teams back to back.
Yeah, they all play each other this year. I heard Florida plays Miami, and they all play each other. So that'll be something interesting to watch. Switching gears, NFL Week One. What a weekend it was! We had the Cowboys weren't able to quite get it done against the defending champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, on Thursday. Then we went to Brazil on Friday. The Chargers upset the Chiefs. Those Brazil games are always really weird to predict what's going to happen because you got to account for the travel and it's the first week, so you never really know what's going to happen there. What were your thoughts on that opening Friday game, Chargers and
I
Chiefs?
I did some research on that because I check out Mexico City. They play down there all the time, and that's like as high as Flagstaff, like 7,000 feet, and there's a lot of pollution. So it's pretty tough to deal with the elevation and that. But Sao Paulo is like the biggest city in the Western Hemisphere. It's like 22 million. So there's a zillion people there, and they get the stadium. It's a Corinthian Stadium or something. It's 48,000. It's the same elevation as Tucson, like 2,500 feet. So it's not a real high elevation like Flagstaff, but they seem to handle it okay. But it's really something to go clear down there, and they're in the Atlantic time zone, an hour east of Eastern. So it wasn't too bad the hour or anything. But it's good to have a game going down to South America. Those fans are good down there. And it was a good game. But those pro games are a lot closer scores than the colleges with these 69-3 games in colleges, 24-20, stuff like that. So it's a lot more balanced than that. So Philadelphia just won it. Big D came up short, but that's the way it goes. But it's nice to check out these new areas and that, and see these new places. And they go to Europe too. And it'll be interesting if the NFL ever does get teams in these far away places.
I think the interest definitely is there for the Europe. Tradition in terms of trying to get the NFL overseas. Sunday we had a slew of games. Broncos, Titans, that one was very rough in terms of the Broncos offense. But Bo Nix had two turnovers and two interceptions and then a fumble and there was just winning at home by 8 points. When you had four turnovers is they really got lucky there. Not Bo Nix's best game by far. Their defense played really well. The Titans had a rookie quarterback, Cam Ward, the number one overall pick. He played okay. I think the Titans will be a lot better than people think because as um as expected, the Broncos this season they're supposed to be really good, and that was a rough week one start for the Broncos.
Yeah, you know what? They're going to be dogging it out with KC for the division championship, and even the Chargers too, and that. So it's not going to be KC rolling along. It's going to be a tough battle between those three, and the Raiders too are in there. So yeah, but Denver did win even with four turnovers. That's pretty good. So you got to give them credit for hanging tough even with the turnovers and still winning. But I think Denver's going to contend for the or AFC West championship.
And of those AFC West coaches, Pete Carroll is now at the Las Vegas Raiders. And with all those coaches, Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, and Sean Payton, they have five Super Bowls between the four of them. So it's a very tough conference, or it's a very tough division now for them. Moving on, Cardinals Saints. Saints had the ball driving down the field to win the game at the end, and they weren't able to get it done. The Saints are probably going to be the worst team in the league. The Cardinals trying to compete for that NFC West game. Your thoughts for Week One as a Cardinals fan? What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, well, I saw the end of it and I said, "Whoa, the Cardinals!" Because we're paying attention to so many teams. It's like, hey, they got a chance to win the game, but they were up 20-10, I think, and couldn't get a field goal off. And then New Orleans gets a field goal, cuts it to 20-13, gets the ball back, just barely won. They got down and the Cardinals hung in there. So, but they got to play in that rugged NFC West with Seattle and San Francisco, and they played each other in a real close game. And of course, the Rams in that division too. That's as rugged as the AFC West. So just hang in there and see if the Cardinals can do something. But again, it's tough just to go 10-7 or 9-8 just to get a winning record is really tough with these teams.
Yeah, I think that'll definitely be a division decided like the very last week, as we've seen many times in the past. Aaron Rodgers had quite the day for the Steelers, four touchdown passes in his Steelers debut. Played against his old team, the New York Jets. That game was a lot better than the experts thought, a lot more high scoring than the experts thought, 34 to 33. Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, he's doing it. 43 years old, I think he is. He's been going at it for forever. I uh, I did not expect this in his debut. Thoughts on the Steelers Jets game?
Well, that was exciting to have a high scoring game. Usually they're lower scoring in the beginning of the year, but the Jets just hanging tough, because they weren't expected to do that. Pittsburgh was supposed to roll, and Jets got a pretty good team. I thought they might have going to pull that out, but the Steelers did it. But see how the Jets do later on this year. They might do something. And but Pittsburgh's always had tough teams for years. They just find a way to get the players and keep rolling along.
Now, each week for the NFL season, we can check in on some Arizona rookies in the league. Now, our guy T-Mac Tedrow McMillan for Carolina made his debut, 5 catches for 68 yards, and Tyler Loop Sunday night could have been the hero for the Ravens, but they did lose to the Bills in a crazy comeback, 41 to 40. Tyler Loop had 2 field goals, 52 yards, and the other one somewhere in the 40s. Extra points though, he went 4 for 5, and that one that he did miss could have made it 41. So, although he did play really well in his debut, losing by 1 point, it's not his fault, obviously. The Ravens should had some bad clock management there at the end. What are your thoughts on potentially another Super Bowl or another MVP for Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson? They seem to win it back and forth. Thoughts on that crazy Sunday night football game?
Well, it's possible. The thing about the Ravens is they didn't watch the ball very carefully because they were driving and they fumbled it when they were up like by 8 or so, and that handed them the Pittsburgh a chance to win the game, or not Pittsburgh, but who are
Buffalo.
they playing? Buffalo, yeah, Buffalo, and that gave it to Buffalo, and they came back and beat them. But if it hung onto the ball, the Ravens would have won. But Tyler did miss that extra point at the end. I noticed that, and I said because he's bombing these 50 yarders out and everything, but it was really the botched fumble that cost him. It wasn't Tyler's extra, but they got to watch to hang on to that ball if they're trying to eat the clock, and because you knew Buffalo would be going for the ball.
Yeah, Derrick Henry. It sucks to see him fumble that because he had a great game, 18 carries for 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson did his thing. Josh Allen, 394 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's very well making the case for being the best quarterback. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes has the pedigree, the 3 Super Bowl rings. You would want him in a win it all game, but Josh Allen, his talent is unmatched in the NFL. Next up on the slate, Packers Lions, a very, very surprising pretty much blowout victory for the Green Bay Packers. It was not as close as the score 27-13 showed. Packers very dominant as the whole NFL fandom knows. Micah Parsons recently acquired for the Packers. You could just see the difference on defense. Packers, do they have a case to make it all the way in the Super Bowl? Do you think they can make it?
Well, yes, that was a big ad for them. And of course, Detroit is tough as ever, but of course, they're playing at home in that, and a little tougher for a dome team to play outside like that. So, but Detroit will still have a lot of wins this year. But the Packers, that could be the thing that'll push them over the top, is getting the Parsons there.
Now, for the Lions, another thing that I think is very underrated, the Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, the talented coordinator that led them to a unstoppable offense last season. He is now the Bears head coach, and we will see them tonight. Monday Night Football, Bears, Vikings. Chicago's favored at home by 1.5. Do you have a prediction of how do you think that game will go tonight?
That would be huge because the other three teams in the division, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Detroit, were way ahead of them in the standings. But Chicago, I guess, is built up, so it's going to be a real tough division like the others we've been talking about, like the AFC West and the NFC West. But yeah, if Chicago wins, that would really change things, and they'd get a lot of respect in a hurry. It'd be a close game because Minnesota's tough as ever. But again, with the ads they made at Chicago, they probably could win that game, and it'd really get a lot of attention right away.
And this upcoming weekend for the NFL is going to be really entertaining. Thursday night, Packers, Commanders, that's going to be a great game to watch. Looking at the Sunday night or not night, but the 325 game, Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl rematch, that's going to be entertaining. What are you looking forward to most this weekend in terms of football in the college and the NFL?
Oh, well, Friday night, of course, with the K-State game to start things off real quick. But you mentioned about the Commanders. They got a pretty good team now, and they've built up big time. There's this new owner and that, and it's really helped boost spirits there in Washington. And they won, and that's ought to be a good game. They're going to play again, coming again this week. So watch out for them in the NFC East. It's not just the Eagles show. I think the Commanders are going to make some noise there too.
Now, for Kansas State, Arizona, what are your keys to winning the game? Because for me, I think Arizona has to get out to a hot start. We saw last year they kind of got out to a good start in the first drive. They got all the way down the field, but they have to execute. They have to get points on the board. I think aggression wise, do you think we should just go for it and go for it on fourth and goal, or do you think we got to take our points?
Well, one of the things is K-State's having trouble with their rush defense. They're getting gashed. And if Arizona can run the ball, they'll just pound it. I mean, if they got to throw it, and they got a lot of receivers. I think Fafita throws to like 12 receivers, so it really gets people off balance. They don't know who they're going to. But if they, because K-State's been getting gashed. But of course, Brennan is really preaching this is a tough team, blah, blah, blah. So he's really making sure the players are ready to go and saying, even though K State struggled in that, he's saying, wait a minute, you watch out for him. He's not underestimating them. So, but they have had trouble on the rush D. So if we can run on them, we got a chance to win.
Yeah, against Weber State, we had 150 rush yards, but really it was kind of out of hand early on. And then against Hawaii, we did have an 183. So obviously that has to be something that we really emphasize, especially Kansas State losing to Army was very shocking because Army the week before had lost to an FCS opponent, Tarleton State, which was a huge upset. So
Mhm.
like you said, every week there's got to be three upsets. Looking at the Army game, the academy teams are always known for their running. 237 yards they were able to get on Kansas State. So I think for us, at least over 150, if not 200 rushing yards, will open up the passing game. 200 and or 102 yards they gave up against North Dakota, Kansas State, and then that first week against Iowa State, obviously Rocco Becht did his thing, airing it out. Which I think we'll have to study that tape because if Fafita can kind of do what Beck did, we'll have a very good chance. Rushing, Iowa State had 130, so I think if we get over I say 130 or 150 rushing yards. That'll open up the passing game. So that'll be huge for us. And executing on special teams will be another factor. It could come down to a game-winning field goal. So we'll have to see what special teams can do. Any last thoughts
Uh,
before we wrap it up?
Yeah, Avery Johnson's really shifty character back there, and our edges have got to be ready to get him or have a spy or something because he can take off and go downtown. And if we keep the running backs bottled up on the receivers, he can take it off, and we'll have to scramble because when a quarterback takes off, it's a whole new game. So they got to stop. They got to keep on have a spy or something covering Avery because he will take off.
Yeah, definitely one of the most athletic quarterbacks that we'll see. I think the lessons learned from this game we can definitely bring into that Iowa State game. That'll probably be our toughest test this season. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the games this season, especially that Territorial Cup. Now that we know that Arizona State is paper tiger, I think we can get him at the end of the year. So Fafita will have to see if he can lead us to victory this coming Friday. There's going to be a lot of great games, and yeah, thanks for
What
watching.
Oh, I had one more
Oh, one
thing.
more thing.
Baylor, we got just before ASU. They gave up a lot of points against SMU. So if we Baylor, I thought we might lose that, but now I think we might have a chance because if their defense doesn't pick things up, they've been getting scored on. We might be able to outscore them and take them. So it's going to be exciting. Even the ASU game, we're looking forward to that. There's so much stuff to be played. See how it shapes up and the bowl assignments and things, it's going to be a scramble right to the wire and see the bowl positioning in that.
Yeah, that'll do it for the Rombough Show. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.